Georgina, this is Reggie. Yeah, yeah. Okay, I'll call. Thank you. Bye.
Black History Month is
intelligence,
resiliency,
integrity,
acceptance,
empowering,
innovative,
remembrance,
identity,
equity,
freedom,
love.
26 House wants to say thank you to all those who have come before us in the African American community and celebrate and embrace Black history.
Together, we stand united as a community of Magic fans with a common passion and love for the game. We cheer together from our living rooms, chat rooms, and in the arena, on the court and off the court. Together, we are strong. Together, we overcome. We are Magic together.
It's time to crack an egg.
Easy, any style egg works here.
Or smile.
Well done, this looks great.
Time to share a story.
I have a great way to start our discussion.
With old friends or new ones.
When you're a caregiver.
Time to breathe in.
And count up. Good job.
Then let it all out. It's never been easier to connect, learn, and have fun.
Cheers.
So let's do it together. Come find us at aarp.org/near you.
It's time to hit reset on HIV. Here's why sticking to HIV treatment, exactly as prescribed, is so important. It helps lower the amount of virus in your body to undetectable. There's so little virus, it can't be measured by a lab test. People living with HIV can protect their partners by getting to and staying undetectable. According to current research, staying undetectable prevents the transmission of HIV through sex. Talk to a healthcare provider and get reset at helpstopthevirus.com.
Welcome to 26 Health, Center Florida's LGBTQ Health Center. I'm Dr. David Baker Hargrove, President and co-CEO. At 26 Health, we strive to create an integrated, multidisciplinary health center that serves all of our community through primary medical care, behavioral health services, adoption services, patient care services, and our MediSpa. At 26 Health, we care for every letter. No matter how you identify, your letter matters to us.
Please be advised that we are that this session will be televised. Hello, my family. I am Reginald B. McGill, Constituent Services Director in Mayor Dyer's office and a member of the city's Black History Month Committee. Thank you for joining us tonight during this webinar. The role of faith in spirituality. It is my hope and my honor to present our mayor, the Honorable Buddy Dyer, to extend our welcome. He will be followed by Commissioner Regina Hill, as well as Commissioner Bakari Burns for welcoming remarks. Then we will be blessed by the vocal talent of Miss Sissy Peoples, who has performed great numbers of gospel and R&B singers such as Natalie Cole and Patti LaBelle. She is a lead member of the Macedonia's music ministry. Concluding my task for this evening by way of introducing our moderator for this evening, the Reverend Sharon Rowley, the pastor of Agape Perfecting Praise and Worship Center in Orlando's West Side Quarter. She is a proud graduate of the University of Florida, an author, a member of the African American Council of Christian Clergy, a member of the Mayor's Council of Clergy, and she is a participant on the Orange County Sheriff's Advisory Board. Reverend Rowley is a proud native of Orlando and a lifelong member of City of Orlando's District 6. And now, ladies and gentlemen, our mayor, Mayor Dyer.
Thank you, Reggie, and good evening to everyone. Thank you for joining us for tonight's Black History Month virtual panel. I'm actually so thankful that even during the pandemic, our community is finding ways to come together to learn and share and celebrate the Black experience. Also think it's important that as a community, we use this month to recommit to continue the work to ensure that all of our residents are treated equally or equally protected and have equitable access to opportunity. I want to thank tonight's panel participants for lending their time and talents. Faith has always been one of the most powerful forces to move and motivate people. So tonight we'll hear from some of our community's leaders who share their backgrounds and diverse, unique experiences. I want to thank our platinum sponsors, 26 Health and Bank of America, as well as our gold sponsors, AARP, Downtown Development Board, Gilead Sciences, and the Orlando Magic. I also want to recognize the hard work and dedication of our City of Orlando Black History Month Committee, which is made up of members, including Reggie, from our city family. And I want to thank you for organizing impactful events like this for our community. Hope everybody enjoys tonight's panel. Thanks.
Happy Black History Month, City of Orlando. We have approached another year to celebrate the richness and strength of our culture. 2020's provided challenges for the African American community and even challenged our unification. But as a people and a community, we rose to speak stronger, cry louder, and herald harmony, so millions would know that we are ready and resilient for anything that may come our way. This year's Black History Month theme in the City of Orlando is the Black family, representation, identity, and diversity. The Black family is known for its unity, its strength, its power. Over the next few weeks, the City Beautiful of the family, things like the soul in our food, and how it's not only filling to the body, but it's edifying to the spirit. The power of our faith in God. Sunday morning church in the Black family is not just a ritualistic statement in our culture, but it's an experience with our Creator and a communal vibrancy. The strength of our arts and culture. We are naturally creative people. Many have experienced this creativity in our music, our dancing, paintings, and so much more. Our empowerment. Our forefathers and civic leaders have fought to give us so many opportunities today. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a greater person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in." Leaders such as Dr. King and his dream has provided opportunities for Black children such as myself and others. As equality and equity continues to be the fight for the Black community and move to the forefront of every major topic in America, empowerment in so many areas of the lives of African Americans will be realized even greater now. Manifestations of that empowerment are in the forms of a Justice Thurgood Marshall, a Condoleezza Rice, and a President Barack Obama, and even now, Vice President Kamala Harris. Empowerment fulfilled. I believe this month, our city and those who will be watching and viewing will see Black History Month is more than just February. They will see, although magnified in a month, that our history here in the city of Orlando when it comes to Blackness is 365 days a year. Black history is American history, and we're grateful to be able to share it with you. Happy Black History Month.
Welcome to the City of Orlando's virtual celebration for Black History Month. I'm Orlando City Commissioner for District 6, Bakari F. Burns. This year, we are celebrating the wholeness of the Black family. Our families are often celebrated through entertainment, like television shows and theater productions, as well as depicted in movies and other mediums. But our families are more than just what's portrayed on the big and small screen. We are extraordinarily diverse, from cooking recipes passed down through generations to hearing, listening, and understanding the wisdom, pain, and joy from our ancestors. The Black family is an essential part of American society because of its multiplicity. The parts of Black culture that's often duplicated and imitated starts from the family. Our faith and spirituality, our ability to dance, sing, orate, and even laugh is passed down through our families. I hope that you enjoy this event and learn more about why the strength of Black families is so important. It's not only how we stand, it's our foundation. Happy Black History Month.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was my fears relieved. Oh, how precious did that grace appear. The hour of first believed. Oh, when we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun. We know last days to sing God's praise. Then when we first begun.
Good evening. Thank you, Sissy. Thank you for stirring our hearts and for getting us started and bringing us into this space where we can really talk about spirituality and faith. I want to thank Reggie McGill for getting us started on this evening, and we are certainly appreciative to our mayor, Mayor Dyer, for your commitment to diversity and certainly for your support of Black history. We'd also like to thank Commissioners Hill and Burns for their remarks on tonight and for sharing in this virtual experience. We are here tonight because of the sacrifice of an incredible committee, the Black History Month Committee for the City of Orlando, who is responsible for orchestrating and facilitating this entire evening. So we want to say thank you to each of them for their participation. What is now celebrated as Black History Month really evolved from what began as National or Negro History Week. And so with beginning as a week, we now have the celebration of an entire month, but we recognize that Black history is a 365-day a year celebration. And so today we formally recognize a month-long reflection and celebration of the achievements of African Americans and their central roles and contributions to U.S. history. For we recognize that there can be no American history, of course, without the inclusion of Black history. This year's National Black History Month theme is Black family, representation, identity, and diversity. And woven within the fiber of many African American families is the exposure to faith and spirituality. Our conversation tonight will focus on the role of faith and spirituality in the African American experience. And since faith and spirituality are commonly shaped within the context of the Black church, we can include the role of the Black church in our conversation on tonight. And as we prepare to get started with our conversation, I'd like to present our distinguished panel, which is comprised of leaders from around the Central Florida community, specifically in the Orlando community. On tonight, we have on our panel, Reverend Erica Rembert Smith. She is the pastor of the Washington Shores Presbyterian Church here in Orlando. Reverend Smith serves extensively in her denomination. She is also a member of the Faith-Based Advisory Board for the Superintendent of Orange County Public Schools. And she is changing lives through her leadership and extensive engagement in our community through outreach abroad and in the Central Florida community. We also have joining us on tonight, Reverend Dr. Randolph Bracey Jr. Reverend Bracey is the Distinguished Professor for the School of Religion and at Bethune-Cookman University, and he is the retired founder and pastor emeritus of the New Covenant Baptist Church here in Orlando. Reverend Bracey has preached, studied, and lectured internationally and is still a sought-after speaker and preacher even beyond retirement. He is teaching a course in Black church history at Bethune, which has a specialty, including a course on the life and work of Howard Washington Thurman and Harry T. Moore, the first martyr of the Civil Rights Movement and graduate of Bethune-Cookman. We also have joining us on tonight Bishop-elect Derrick Mcrae. Pastor Mcrae is the founder and bishop-elect of the Experience Christian Center here in Orlando. He is an author, music producer, and is the newly elected president of the African American Council of Christian Clergy. In addition, we also have Imam Hatim Hamidullah. He is the Imam or the clergy of Masjid Al-Haq here in Orlando. He is an active member of the Florida Conference of Muslim Americans in association with the ministry of Imam W.D. Muhammad. He also participates in the Mayor's Interfaith Council of Central Florida. He is the executive director of Knowledge for Living Incorporated, which is a 501c3 nonprofit, which seeks to improve the total well-being of citizens in economically disadvantaged communities, and they accomplish this through social services and education. And then we also have joining us on tonight the distinguished Reverend Terence R. Gray, who is the senior pastor of the St. Mark AME Church here in Orlando. He's a prominent voice in our community and influencer in the Orlando community. He serves as the vice president of the African American Council of Christian Clergy. We want to welcome our panelists on tonight, and we are certainly appreciative of the fact that you are able to join us. Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s latest book, The Black Church, This Is Our Story, This Is Our Song, was released on today. In the book, Gates writes, the Black Church is the oldest, most continuous institution established by Black America. He suggests faith and spirituality bear some responsibility in shaping the engagement of African Americans in the abolitionist movement, throughout the Jim Crow era, the Civil Rights Movement, and even the Black Lives Matter movement. Gates also suggests that there would be no Joe Biden, Kamala Harris White House without the influence of faith and spirituality in the Black experience. Our panelists on tonight will begin our conversation with a 3 to 5 minute expression on our topic. We will proceed in the order of our introductions, beginning with Reverend Smith, and they will simply share their thoughts on this question. What thoughts do you have when you consider the role of faith and spirituality as it relates to the African American experience or the Black family? Again, share with us your thoughts as you consider the role of faith and spirituality as it relates to the African American experience. Thank you.
Good afternoon or good evening. It is an honor to be a part of this panel of distinguished and prolific faith leaders in our community, and I am honored to be here as a part of this evening's discussion. Faith and spirituality are central in the lives of the Black community. Faith and spirituality historically and continues to be a cornerstone of our community. It empowered people to keep going in the face of oppression and slavery, and it empowered people with inspiration and determination to press on beyond challenges that were all around us. Faith and spirituality in the Black community is rooted in the sacred text. It's communicated through the written and spoken word. It's related and celebrated through songs sung, embodied in our attempts to act justly, to love mercy, to show kindness, and to walk humbly with God. Faith and spirituality is central to my story. Growing up as a third-generation Presbyterian in South Carolina, I was raised in the Black community. I was nurtured in the faith tradition of a predominantly white denomination, and I also spent time singing songs and hearing sermons preached in and serving alongside churches that are a part of the historic Black denominations. In the Black community, many of us belong to particular denominations, but we transcended denominational affiliations. We were Black first, Christian second, and then we were a part of our various communities of faith. I'm in small town, South Carolina. I attended the Presbyterian church there, and there were some who attended the Presbyterian church on first and third Sundays, the Baptist church on second Sundays, the AME church on fourth Sundays, and alternated churches on fifth Sundays. Members of the Black community claimed their denominational heritage with pride, and yet we banded together as a Black community every day of the week. When there was a need, the community always found a way to meet the need together. Our elders marched together during the civil rights era, protested together in the days of Jim Crow, and today we stand together in these days as we proclaim that Black lives matter. Faith and spirituality in the Black community take on different forms of expressions, and yet the common denominator is the reliance on the God who will lift up the lowly and feed the hungry, empower the powerless, give voice to the voiceless, and meet the needs of humanity through the hands and feet of ordinary people. One of the things that I think about is as it relates to faith and spirituality in the Black community is how it connects us to God and to one another. Our faith in a God who is on the side of the oppressed, a God who would deliver brown people from the bondage of slavery while walking with them through the wilderness and providing for them as they experience trouble without and within, has through the years encouraged members of our community to keep on keeping on because we believed God saw and sees our plight. Faith in a Savior who could identify with our suffering has provided us with strength for the struggle. And so our community, my community, found its mission and its marching orders in the revolutionary ministry of Jesus. And so like Jesus, we continue to advocate on behalf of the least of these. We continue to lift up the oppressed. We continue to speak life and encourage a sense of somebodyness to those who don the doors of our community. Faith and spirituality is a connector to God and to humanity, and it continues to be a cornerstone in the Black community.
Thank you, Reverend Smith. Thank you. We will continue with Reverend Randolph Bracey. What are your thoughts as you consider the role of faith and spirituality as it relates to the African American experience?
Hello. I'm seeming having some difficulty starting. Can you hear me? I'm having difficulty.
Yes, sir. We can hear you, Reverend.
Can you see me?
We can't see you, but we can hear you. Please go ahead.
I'm a storyteller. Let me share two stories from my life story, which hopefully should give you insights into my personal pilgrimage and quest toward a life of faith and spirituality. I'm an authentic member of the Christian church, having been born in Jacksonville, Florida as an only child. 76 years ago in 1944 and brought to the New Bethel African Methodist Episcopal Church and christened. During this period, I knew that there were other Protestant forms of worship, like the Baptists, the Methodists, the Pentecostals, and the Holiness. But my religious milieu was the kind of environment where you went to your church, I went to mine. And occasionally we as kids interacted in our separate but unequal schools during the period of segregation and Jim Crow. My first story is about Irma. I remember Irma. Let me just tell you about Irma. Irma and I had grown up through elementary school, and we were both in the 8th grade. Irma was the smartest girl I had ever known. There was never a test during that period that Irma did not come out on top. I shall never forget the fact that Irma always wore a floor-length dress to school each day, much like the Amish women of Pennsylvania. Her head was covered with a small hat and net. Other than her face and hands, no flesh was ever seen. Irma dressed differently from the other girls, but what set her apart was that she was tall and stately and the smartest person in our class. Then came the 9th grade, and Irma literally disappeared. As an inquisitive kid, I wanted to know what happened to Irma. I was told that she was in holiness, and her faith would not allow girls to go beyond the 8th grade in school. At the time, I could not understand why anyone that smart could be kept from going further in school. As I look back to that place and time, perhaps that's why the Lord God himself has given me a passion to help smart sisters in their quest to do ministry. It was the Apostle Paul who said in 2 Corinthians, "If I boast in the Lord." I was the first Black pastor in Central Florida to give a woman the position of full-time assistant pastor with all the benefits commensurate with that position, such as retirement, raises, and a sabbatical. That's my first story. Let me tell you my second story. My father and mother. My mother gave birth to me in her late 30s. And during my adolescent years, she would repeatedly tell me the Old Testament story of Hannah and Samuel, and how Hannah prayed that the Lord would give her a boy child, and she would give him back to the Lord for the rest of his life. When I was born, my mother, like Hannah, made good on her promise. She gave me back to the Lord through her prayers and teachings, for her main desire for her only son was to become a preacher. Now, strange as it may seem, with my strong background in the Christian faith, I did not start out to be a boy preacher. Much like the Old Testament prophet Jonah, I did everything I could to run away from the prayers of my mother and my calling. My father had one opportunity in life to hear me speak at a church on their Men's Day in 1976, 45 years ago before he passed. I had purchased him an audio cassette recorder that he used to record the only message that he heard me speak. On the day that he died, he's sitting on the couch playing my message when he summoned my mother to stop whatever she was doing to come and listen to my message. My father was so enamored with what he heard that he exclaimed to my mother, "That boy is going to preach God's gospel, and I'm going to help him." With those last words, he closed his eyes and went on to glory. I subsequently decided to go to seminary after I had already earned my terminal degree at the University of Florida. For my mother, going to seminary was the answered prayer of a dream. Never mind Bethune-Cookman, Never mind Florida A&M, never mind the University of Florida. Her boy was finally going to seminary to become a preacher. My mother was able to see my wife build a church right here in Orlando, the New Covenant Baptist Church of Orlando, in the record time of 4 years, from 1992 when we started to 1996, based exclusively on our faith in God. On the day that we marched into our new edifice in August of 1996, just before Labor Day, my mother was interviewed as mother of the pastor. She told the interviewer, "I can go home now because my eyes have seen the glory of the Lord." Less than 6 weeks later, she was gone. I share these two stories to give you insight into my personal pilgrimage of faith and spirituality. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Bracey. I can certainly attest to the fact that you are definitely a supporter and an encourager of sisters. And I wouldn't necessarily call myself a smart sister, but you've called me a smart sister. And I just want to say thank you for your continued support in my quest to do ministry. You and your precious wife consistently support and stand with me. And so thank you for that. We would like to continue our conversation with Bishop-elect Derrick Mcrae. We'd like to hear your thoughts on whether or not you consider, or as you consider, the role of faith and spirituality as it relates to the African-American experience.
Thank you so very much. Thank you for having me tonight as well. It's hard to come behind Dr. Smith and also behind Dr. Bracey, who are just tremendous statesmen in our community. I'm young enough to experience some things, but yet old enough to also have been able to navigate through some different seasons of life. And something that I found about the role of faith as it relates to the African-American experience. I remember being a little boy growing up in the big city of Avon Park, Florida. And as I was growing up there in Avon Park, I remember being exposed to the church at a very, very early age. And my grandmother taught me the pillars of faith. My father and my mom had me their last years of high school. My mom was on her way to Florida State University. My father was on his way to Florida State Penitentiary. And I was left with my grandparents. My grandfather wasn't in church. My grandmother was heavily in the church. And she taught me what it means to believe. And that's what I see faith. She taught me what it means to believe. Even at the early age, she began to teach me the word of God as according to the Holy Writ. And she began to tell me three things that I kind of took out of those discussions with my grandmother. The first thing was that the faith always gave us direction. Faith gave us direction. As I was reading the Bible and I was going through the book of Genesis, I find a similar pattern. Didn't know it then, but understanding a lot more now as I parallel life sometimes with the life of Joseph. We find that Joseph had a dream, as the word teaches us. This dream was given to him by God. The dream was so convincing to Joseph that he came back out and he began to create a verbal contract with everybody who would listen. And he began to tell all his brothers how he would one day rule over them, how they would begin to bow down to him. The essence of that is that he had such confidence in what was revealed to him by God. And that is where I believe the African-American race has been. Faith has given us direction. It's given us direction. It's given us hope. It's given us a guidance for what is possible and what we have the potential to become. Not only does it give us direction, but it also gives us this thing called determination. Because even when we find, just as Joseph did, that times get rough, sometimes they're unfair seemingly. Sometimes it feels like they are moments that we do not deserve what happens to us. We find that the word that God gave to us, the faith that we have, gives us stamina, gives us the abilities to still yet be determined when everything else in life says that we should give up. Many people ask the question, and I remember even hearing the old song that says, "How I got over." My soul looks back and wonder how I got over. The only way we got over, the only way we're still getting over, is because our faith gives us a sense of determination to know that the God that we serve hears all, knows all, and is able to do all. And that brings us a sense of confidence. And the last thing that our faith has done over the years and is still doing, it also gives us what I call deliverables. It gives us deliverables. Hebrews 11:1 says something. It says, "Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen." And so there are moments in our faith that we don't yet see it yet, but it does not mean we don't still hope for it. We have an inner confidence that God cares, that God sees, and that God is able to perform. And I believe that when we look over our history and we see how the Black race has continuously made it over valleys and reached mountains and then more valleys, it's been through the determination, it's been through the direction, and it's also been through the fact that we have something that is called a deliverable. We trust the God that we serve, that in his season and in his time, that everything that he's spoken will come to pass. And as we look back and I see the life that my grandparents created for me, I didn't see it then, but I see it now, that everything that was spoken, everything that was promised is working and coming to pass even as we speak right now. And so that's what I see far as faith and how it's brought the Black culture over to where we are today. And we're still yet evolving, still yet becoming. And it's all because we have a word from the Lord and we're still trusting and standing on the word that God has spoken. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Bishop-elect Derrick Mcrae. We really appreciate you sharing. We are going to now have those same comments from Imam Hatim Hamadullah. If you will share with us your thoughts as relates to the role of spirituality and faith concerning the African American community.
Yes, I'm thankful to be part of this particular panel, and we applaud the mayor and his A-team. I know he has a big team, but we applaud the mayor and his team, and Reggie and all, for continuing to display inclusion for all Central Floridians, all of the citizens of Central Florida. While listening to the previous speakers on this dais, on this panel here in this media, I had kind of like jotted some notes down, and I'm going to say this, I'm going to say that, but every speaker prompted me to think about my childhood and think about my mother, my father. But most children, they think about mama. So I remember seeing my father and mother attend church, but my mother was more, usually mothers are, more engaged with the word of God. And this whole idea about faith and spirituality, rings a gentle bell in my heart, gentle bell in my soul for my childhood at this time, during this particular session with the religious leaders that are on this dais. So I'd like to refer to her as someone who watched over us and in our home life and humble abode there in small abode there in Central Texas. So don't get upset with me if I start crying and shedding tears, because you all are putting me in that frame of mind. I am Muslim, one of the imams or religious leaders that have the responsibility as any clergy who has found his way to God, his way to the reality of what he sees, speaking for myself, as the destined pathway that God has for me, and responsibility of being a shepherd so to speak, leader by example, and I call it mostly faith stewardship, to be actually leader by example as much as possible, and to have that camaraderie, you know. And this whole idea, speaking about my mother, one of her favorite songs was "My Eye is on the Sparrow." I remember that, and I'm pretty sure that some of you know about that song. And I didn't know, we'll have this conversation later, but I didn't know really actually, you know, the wisdom behind that song and many songs, as I grew up also, as many of you, most of you, in the church. However, in my later years, I began to do a deep dive into religious philosophy, religious theology, world history, world religions, etc. And that is what brought me full circle for myself, from my perception, to the religion of Islam. And most people, perhaps some people may know, some maybe not, know that 20% of most of the slaves that were brought over here into the United States of America from West Africa and different parts of Africa were Muslim slaves. Queen Isabella found out that there was the majority of the slaves had been Christians, and she told them, don't get Christian slaves, get those Muslims and bring those over. That was toward the latter part of the slave movement, or the slave trade. So I wanted to mention those things because there is a percentage also of Muslims in Central Florida, and also in major cities across the United States of America. We have over 250, maybe more, mosques or masjids or masajid that represent the Islamic faith. So we have made our contribution to the world's growth and development when it comes to spirituality, faith and spirituality, and also the academia. But I wanted to come quickly to something that Dr. Randolph Bracey said. And he was saying that as he grew up, there was a Miss Irma. I think he said the sister name was Irma in the 8th grade, etc. All of a sudden she left. But what struck me was how Irma dressed. She had a floor length dress. And that floor length dress struck my mind as understanding through history, that dress started coming up slowly and slowly every year and every generation, you know, not so much for her, but for the society. And what I was used to was my mother also being dressed modestly. So to make a long presentation short, I want to jump to this whole idea of faith when it comes to our community. You know, I have recognized that even the homeless people in the Paramount area of this Central Florida, when you really have a good down-to-earth conversation with them, male or female, all of them have faith. So everybody really, at the end of the day, as they say, have a degree of faith that keeps them going. And I'd like to say that for Muslim, Jews, and Christians, I have a humble beginning in Christianity, an association with Jews, and a birth into a global theology, understanding of what we call the Holy Quran, the last revelation sent to humankind, or human beings, sent to Muhammad, Rasulullah, the messenger of Allah, that we say the messenger of God. So quickly, faith is for us the oneness of God. Those of us who adhere to this, and there are a few of them in the Orlando area that comes to my place of worship that I'm responsible for facilitating. We have about 40% immigrants and 60% African Americans there on Terry and Central. When it comes to faith, we believe in the oneness of God and the oneness of creation. So therefore, we believe in the oneness of humanity. And this crosses all color lines, et cetera, et cetera. So in regards to Islamic spirituality is defined as the presence of a devoted relationship with God, whom we call Allah, the same God that created you and me and the creation and all that we see in it, skies and heavens and all. We believe in that same God. And I see that golden thread of faith that is, permeating our communities. And that's the reason why I love Orlando, because I look at the leadership of Orlando and how he leads, and I look at the clergy of Orlando and how they lead, and I look at the establishment of the city hall, city security, what we call the county security, the county responsibilities and all that's going on. And I see that everybody is fighting for a delicate balance. So spirituality has to be something that is considered by all people, and faith has to have a common thread that goes through the hearts of and souls of all human beings. So for us as African Americans, us as Black people in this Central Florida area and around the country, I do believe that we have overcome. And I hear this song every year, "We shall overcome, we shall," and I love that song. But my mind goes to, well, when are we going to overcome? You see, so I believe that deep in my heart, I do believe we have overcome, and we're going to continue to overcome, not someday, but right now, moving and navigating into our blessed future. So that's what I have to say. And may God bless each and every one of you and your families. And God bless Orlando, Florida.
Thank you, Imam.
You're most welcome.
I can concur. We are watching the length of those dresses go higher and higher and higher. And right about now, I think we call them hip high.
Oh my God.
Thank you. We would also at this time like to invite the voice of Reverend Terence Gray to share with us your thoughts as it relates to the role of spirituality and faith concerning the African American community.
Let me begin by saying thank you so very kindly to Reginald McGill and our beloved mayor for giving me this opportunity to be a part of such a distinguished panel, and all the more thank you, Reverend Riley, for your kindness of your presentation and how you're facilitating us this night. I begin by going back to what I understand as definitions, so you can then have an appreciation for my approach to the subject that's being presented, faith and spirituality in the Black community. My understanding of faith is that it is the substance of things hoped for or evidence of things not seen. One could take it a step further and say it is the core of my belief system. When I talk about spirituality, I talk about the discipline through which that faith is lived out. How is it that I practice this faith that I say I believe? What is it that, how do I practice what I say I believe? And how is that impacting in the Black community? Well, I began by reminding many of you of just two movies, one that came out some years ago and one that is recent. And that one that came out some years ago had everything to do with Selma. And if you remember carefully, it was that movie that depicted how Annie Lee Cooper was attempting to register to vote in Selma, thus creating the movie as well as all that was the civil rights experience to go forward in that area. While we look at that, we forget that it was a Southern Christian Leadership Council, Southern Christian, ultimately people of faith that decided to be engaged in civil activity. It was their faith that was then lived out and practiced through a discipline that caused them to move. Before moving to the next movie, stay right there with that same ideology and deal with Rosa Parks. Rosa Parks, who happened to be a member of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, who was part of the Stewardess Board, who decided that day and decided that she was not willing to get up. Because she was not willing to get up, she found herself being a part of the movement that we recognize that changed the Montgomery Bus Company and the eras of the ushering in the civil rights movement. Her core beliefs caused her to say, enough is enough. And the religious community came together and ushered that idea and pushed it forward into the eyes, the minds, and the lives of the community of people who made up the African American community. The other movie that I wish to raise to you is recent, written by, I think, directed by Regina King. We know it as One Night in Miami. If what we saw on the screen is true, if what we observed and call it a real reality of what transpired, it was a voice of Malcolm X who was pricking, who was messing with, who was pushing along names such as Sam Cooke and Muhammad Ali and Jim Brown. He was working diligently hard to try to get them to begin seeing their possibilities and for them to not shrink from the opportunity of recognizing or maximizing what they could do with the gifts of exposure and graces they had been presented. It was a spiritual man. It was a faith man who had discipline, who was pushing his colleagues and his brothers to stretch out to be different and to become better than what they are. Well, when I come back and I deal with faith and spirituality, then these words jump to mind. And that is, the role of that is to prick, which means we are designed to keep pushing it, keep pushing the envelope, keep hitting it, keep hitting it. And sometimes people will say in the church, when you are dealing with serious issues, you're stepping on my toes. Well, that's what the faith ought to do. It ought to step on your toes. But those toes ought to then fall in line to be disciplined enough to become different as we make changes within our community, as well as we make changes within our own homes, and as we make changes within our state. But it also should do something else. It should also push us, which means every now and then, all of us needs a little nudge. No matter who we are, that's what happens with faith, my core belief, moving it into a discipline, causes me to be pushed a little, just a little nudge, just a little shove, to allow me to see that there is more that God. Then may I say to you, lastly, that it also propels, which means it allows me to therefore go forward and to therefore do more than what I have been doing at this present time. It is a wonderful opportunity to be a part of this group, and I look forward to our continued sharing. And I do apologize for the calls that have basically tried to come in to impede me in this conversation. But thank you for giving me this opportunity. God bless.
Thank you, Reverend Gray. Thank you to our panelists. I would also like to encourage those of you who are participating on tonight as you are viewing this discussion, please feel free to enter your questions in the chat, any questions that you would like to have posed to the panelists. We would like to consider your questions and hopefully get to them before we are done on this evening. I would like to invite our panelists to consider this question. Historically, faith and spirituality has been important in the Black community. And given the strides made by African Americans and the upward mobility of many in the Black community, how central is faith and spirituality in the Black community today? And how is that faith and spirituality lived out in our communities? We can begin with Reverend Erica Smith.
Thank you, Reverend Riley, for that question. I think faith is still central to the Black community in light of and in spite of how many strides we've made, we must continue to rely on our faith, for the faith that grounded us in our growing years and that keeps us in these current years. It's a faith in a God who keeps us and gives us ability and helps us to achieve and accomplish the things that we have achieved and accomplished. So I think it's central. It doesn't matter how far we've come, faith and spirituality is always important and should continue to be central in our communities as well as in our lives. I think that faith continues to be lived out as we make strides, as we are propelled forward. Our faith would call us to pull someone else up, to propel someone else forward. We're blessed to be a blessing. That is what my faith tells me. I'm blessed to be a blessing. We're blessed to be a blessing. And so faith would call us to help lift others up. And that faith is lived out by doing just that, advocating for those who cannot do for themselves, being a voice for those who can't speak for themselves, standing up for those who, for whatever reason, cannot or are afraid to stand up for themselves. That faith is lived out by embodying the principles of the sacred text. It's lived out by embodying, for me and for my faith community, Micah 6 verse 8 calls us to act justly, to show kindness, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with God. And our faith, our sacred text also calls us to be disciples, to follow after the one in whom we place our faith, and that's Jesus. Jesus advocated for the least of these. Jesus brought those who were left out at the table to the table. Jesus advocated for the poor, lifted up the poor, lifted up women. Jesus pricked things, as Pastor Gray talked about. He was a pricker, and he pushed, and he did not back down, even though people were upset because he pushed and pricked. He came to turn the systems around. So Jesus came to level the playing field. And so as we live out our faith, we will work to help level the playing field for others. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Smith. I'd like to pose the question specifically right now to Imam. I would like to ask for you to share what you can concerning Islam's presence in the civil rights era.
Oh, yes. Thank you for that question. I think that, you know, the good Reverend mentioned one of the key individuals, I won't use the word players, but one of the key individuals that was among many, but was not really given credit for his prodding, and I would say pricking and prodding to the Reverend. I like that. That's probably going to be one of my lectures in the very near future. It's going to include pricking and prodding. But in the civil rights movement, there were three and more major individuals that, you know, was able to tap into the excellent nature of us as a people. You know, when we were brought here, we were kind of like, you know, just snatched up by the root. And after slavery, we were just kind of like, almost, not everyone, but I would describe it as cattle not knowing where to graze, you know? And so Dr. Martin Luther King Malcolm Abdul Shabazz, Malcolm X, El Hajj, Malcolm X. And many don't know about Elijah Muhammad and how, if you're in that age group or you heard about these songs, it was Elijah Muhammad that inspired James Brown to the song "Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud." A lot of people don't know that, but he told the administration in the Chicago area that it was Elijah Muhammad that kind of made him utilize his exposure as an entertainer to wake up the conscious, you know, of African-American Black people at that time. We've been called everything under the sun. I think we were being called colored people and all of that stuff. But we have been moving onward and upward. You know, the civil rights was a waking up of a sleeping giant for Black people as valuable members of the human race. They recognize that we're not 3/5 of a human being. We are human beings, and we want to measure up to our humanity. You know, so the civil rights movement was a very, very timely movement that set the stage and set the pace for people who had been stripped of the identity of self and knowing their God and being able to have a resilience in their nature to come back. And that's one thing that we do have. Everything has been done to us, but we have this resilience, I think as the commissioner said earlier, to come back and to even smile in the face of situations where it's a lot of degradation. And then we got that, and we had to live through that, and we shouldn't forget our lessons, you know, of the civil rights movement. We should always go back and do a deep study of what transpired, see how we can do things better, and to identify, you know, people don't know, but there were Caucasian people, white people, Jews, entertainers from the industry that supported the civil rights movement. So I see it as a golden thread of faith, the golden thread of spirituality that God himself has wired into our human nature. And we should continue to acknowledge that with all of the races and people, etc., let us not forget the human race, and that we are all tied together in one way or another. Thank you.
Thank you, Imam. Thank you for enlightening us and for inspiring us with your thoughts. I'd like to pose this question to Reverend Randolph Bracey. If systemic racism in politics and culture in general have provoked a synergistic thought concerning how African Americans are to engage, what does that thought sound like? And according to faith and spirituality, what would you say are some of the rules of engagement for today? Reverend Bracey, are you still with us? All right, perhaps he's experiencing some connection issues.
I'm unmuted, okay.
We hear you now.
I think that the challenges of this present age, it was an old Methodist preacher named Charles Wesley who wrote a song that said, "A charge to keep I have, a God to glorify." But the second verse is perhaps the most poignant and most powerful and most piercing. He said, "To serve this present age, my calling to fulfill." Please understand that we serve a different age. We have an age now that demands a brand new paradigm to dealing with the problems that confront us as people of color. We live in an age now where our adversaries have come out the closet, and they might have been in sheets before, but they're in your face now in terms of white supremacy. So I think that it demands, at this present time, demands a different response to deal with those things that are in adversarial relationship with us. We must be as wise as Jesus says, as serpents, but as harmless as doves. But we still need to meet these people on the ground that they've decided to fight us on. Just a few days ago, on what is it, January 6th, we saw our country literally torn asunder. And make no mistake about it, when you strip it of all its levers and all of its skins, it's all about race. It's all about a response to a significant segment of our population who feels threatened by the expanding demographic that says within the next 20 years, this nation, the United States of America, will be majority brown and black and no longer Anglo. And that scares, that's part of really why we had that thing on January, what's it, January 6th, February 6th, whenever it was. That's why, because people are fearful, and we as people of color, we as people of faith, we must not reject what has brought us this far. I can remember, and I'll close on this side there, when I was brought up in church, they used to process in church. That's an anachronism now, but we used to process. In other words, the choir used to start at the back of the church and would march into the church. And the number one shibboleth that they would sing is, "We've come this far by faith, leaning on the Lord, trusting in his holy word, and he's never failed us yet." We cannot forget that he's brought us through 156 years of slavery, and he will take us on. But we must be able to engage this new paradigm through the eyes of faith. Did you hear, I did all of that without, you didn't get my beautiful face, but did you hear me? Did you, that we, especially the clergy, especially the Christian clergy, and no offense, Iman, no offense, but we have borne our burdens in the heat of the day. We've borne and we've led these people. We talk about the Martin Luther Kings and the ministers and the SCLCs that have brought us this far. But it was the Black church who held us together and guided us and gave us nurture. And we must be able to engage, because we got a new fight on our hands now. We got a new fight of white supremacy. They've exchanged their clothes now, and their people are not afraid or not ashamed to tell, I'm a white supremacist and I'm a fearful. And what we're seeing over and over again is a reaction to the demographics of within 20 years, the United States Census said this country will no longer be majority Anglo, but majority brown and black. And that's what scares. That's what scares. And so I'm always, as a preacher, looking for a biblical analogy. And the best biblical analogy I can give is in the book of Daniel, when there was a handwriting on the wall, and they sent for the man of God to give an interpretation. And Daniel came, he was an old man when he came there, and he told them, the Lord has found you wanting, and this day your kingdom will be required. That's what scares the people. That's what scares the people. And that's what we got to deal with this new paradigm of recalcitrance, of ugliness, and taking over the capital and bringing in all kinds of ugly things talking about hanging people. That's what's happening now. Satan has taken a new form. And we must be as wise as serpents, but as harmless as doves.
Amen, Reverend Bracey. Thank you. Reverend Gray, considering this conversation and considering the posture of our nation, when you think about our national narrative, particularly in the last 12 months or so, when you think about George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and you think about the pandemic and the Capitol insurrection that Reverend Bracey referred to on January 6th, how equipped do you think we are as a people to deal with this kind of adversity?
Thank you very kindly for the question. And I begin my response by saying I still am nervous. And here's why I'm nervous. I love Reverend Bracey. And Reverend Bracey and I find ourselves being blessed to talk about books, movies that enhance us. We basically continue that dialogue as to what's happening. So one of our most recent readings that we did not long ago was by Robert Jones, entitled White Too Long. As strange as it may seem, many people who are of our profession have possibly not even heard the book, but ultimately the book is by a person who is a Caucasian minister, who's a professor, who basically has had a chance to affirm or deal with how white racism or racism has existed and been sustained inside of the white church and been the birthplace to perpetuate it. So Southern National Baptist, the Southern National Baptist Church and the Evangelical Church are founded in a sense to basically propel and maintain segregation and racism, okay? So when you ask the question, Sharon, here's my response. Are we still learning? And the beautiful thing about White Too Long is, I'm gonna go ahead and get a punchline, because if you ain't read it yet, shame on you, because you should have read it by now. Is the brother has this Caucasian brother says at the very end of the book that the mark of Cain is whiteness. Now, when that brother said that, I want you to know I had to take time to read that thing 2 or 3 times, because the brother basically said that there's only white folk that have killed their brothers consistently across continents. They've been the ones who dropped the bombs in Hiroshima. They've been the ones who killed folk coming out of Africa. They the ones who ran off the Indians, and they've been the ones killing people in Korea and other parts of the land. And so thus you hear me beginning saying to you, an enlightenment. I mean, are Black folk being enlightened? Well, where does enlightenment start? I went back early and I talked about my faith, my belief system, my core systems. But if my colleagues are not being as astute to stay on the cutting edge of civil and civic concerns and have moved and stopped being so interested in trying to lull our people to sleep and being at ease in Zion, to be comfortable with a nice suit and a goddamn nice car and a couple of dollars in your pocket, when your community continues to erode and evaporate, then that means somebody is preaching a gospel that it gives people a sense of comfort, but has not given them that sense of crisis and that pricking and that pushing and that propelling. And because if you're not consistently driving home that there's more to do, then ultimately we're going to be in trouble. So the question is, are we as ready? Then my response to you is, I'm more afraid, Sharon, that our generation right now, where we are, a little bit too at ease for what is happening. Now, here's the other thing I want to tell you now. Here's the other thing, here's what I don't think my Caucasian brothers don't realize. Is while I don't think they are as ready, as spiritually, and from as far as faith is concerned, what I do know they do is they got their guns now, which means you can't come down in the hood no more and come down there saying boo. You can't come in the black neighborhood and say boo no more. You come in that black neighborhood now with your hood on, you're gonna get shot because that day is gone. That right there gone. They could do that in DC, but you can't do that in the black. Don't come in Richmond Heights. Don't come in Washington Shores trying to try that stuff. That junk ain't gonna work. They're gonna shoot you. And they're gonna shoot you down dead. And guess what? And Reverend, I'm gonna be the main one shooting. I do believe that you want to tell me that I have the right to therefore hold my ground and stand my ground. I'm gonna stand it on that context. But I don't believe that faith part is as there as I think it needs to be. So I think that was your question. And I end there because I don't think we are still on the cutting edge of being enlightened to the times at present time.
Thank you, Pastor Gray. So we recognize that faith and the firearm are going to go hand in hand.
Oh, yes, Lord.
I'd like to pose this question to Bishop-elect Derrick Mcrae. How do we communicate or transfer, or maybe even translate the relevance of faith and spirituality to the next generation?
That's a very good question. I think one of the things that we got to make sure we recognize is that the generation of today sometimes look at faith as tradition, and they don't look at it as something that is evolving and something that can apply to them. I think that we also have to be more transparent. Those who have been through different things, who have accomplished different things, we have to be more transparent about how we got to where we are. Because I think sometimes the generation of today feels that there is a disconnect. I've often heard younger individuals even tell me, you don't understand, times are different. And I think we have to do a better job of communicating that you may be dealing with something different, but you're still dealing with something that's the same. And so the Bible says there's nothing new under the sun. All of us have gone through something. Transparency is necessary. At the same time, while those who are the more seasoned are rendering their time and their support to giving understanding to a generation that is coming up, we also have to be willing as a generation to embrace, listen, and also to lessen our stance on some of the things that we believe to be concrete, to allow it to now be more fluid, allowing our minds to be shifted and adjusted and also developed, recognizing that we don't know everything. I like to say oftentimes that you can't give instructions from where you have not been. The most you can do is guess. And our generation can't afford to be guessers. We really need to be those who come alongside those who have already gone through things. I've read the book that Dr. Lavon Bracey wrote. It just gives insight about how transition takes place and how she had the credibility and also the ability to stand. Well, if you look at Dr. Bracey today, you may not know the struggle or the story because it may look like she's just in a great position now. And a lot of times the younger generation misunderstands, misdiagnoses where we're standing because of the fact that they're so into their struggle. And sometimes it's a hidden struggle from the generation beyond. But I think that the transparency is going to be a true key for us walking forward. And I think the generation that has been before has to give permission for even some mistakes in the generation today and come alongside to help guide and support them along with those mistakes that are made, those failures that are made, but teach how to get back up, how to do it all over again. Show how maybe the first time around does not work. What do we do when it does not work the first time around? Dr. King, Rosa Parks, many of the W. Du Bois, the things that they dealt with, it didn't necessarily mean that they were successful on the first time around, but they had a bite within them to still press for more. And if there's anything that I find that is absent sometimes in this generation is we're too quick to give up. We're too quick to throw in the towel. We're too quick to just decide what cannot be done no more. And I think that we need more impartation from the senior population to speak to us, to let us know that the first time I didn't make it, the second time I didn't make it, I didn't always have what I have. But there has to be a unilateral agreement between the younger population and the older population to come together so that we won't have any empty bridges, but we can also see ourselves transitioning through. And so I think that's very important that transparency is applied. And I love transparency because when you're able to be transparent, it's usually because you're able to talk about something that you've already accomplished, something you've overcome. I'm not ashamed of what I've already graduated from. I am ashamed about what I may still be in. But when I've graduated from something, when I've overcome something, I see that as it's necessary teachings for those who are going to go through the same things that I'm doing. And I think that has to be what we apply to this generation now, if we're going to truly see us continue to grow in strength and numbers.
Thank you, Bishop-elect McCrae. I hear you all saying, Dr. Bracey and Reverend Gray, and for the rest of the panel, that one of the things we are necessarily going to need to do is, first of all, engage the new paradigm. Reverend Gray, I heard you say that we're kind of too much at ease. And I heard Bishop-elect Derrick Mcrae say that there needs to be more transparency from the older generation. And you're basically telling us that the younger generation is willing to hear if the older generation is willing to share. Is that right?
No, I'm not saying that at all as well. I think it's something that has to happen on both sides of the tracks. The younger generation has to be willing to listen. Here's the truth, Pastor Riley. Sometimes I think that sometimes we give information the same way. And giving information the same way, but it's not being digested, does not mean that it's being received. I think that we have to figure out ways to do it. Personal testimonies. Let's look at the times that we're in right now. This is a reality TV time. So people want to hear the real stories coming from the real individuals. And so as we keep looking back, as we should, to Martin Luther King's and to all the great ones, Medgar Evers and all those that have come before us, Frederick Douglass and all those, as we should, we also do have Randolph Bracey's. We also do have LaVon Bracey's. We also do have Terence Graves. We have Father Penders. We have some of those individuals right here now. And today it may not be coming through the form of a book. It may be coming through a videography where we're hearing some of those testimonies being spoken to us about how individuals have gone through things. But the younger generation also has to be willing to be equipped and educated versus just being entertained, which I think is a big failure to our community as African Americans, that we're so into entertainment, that we're not into enrichment, we're not into empowerment. And then when we are into empowerment, it tends to be through things that don't have much substance. And so we got to take value, we got to take advantage of those who are with us now, who have a story that they can tell to us. And we have to open our arms to say, hey, we want to hear, we want to know. And so I think it's on both sides that there has to be a unity of agreement that comes together to say, what can we do together to be better? But it starts from both sides recognizing that we haven't done all and we don't know all. And now we work together.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to pose one last question, and I'd like for the entire panel to share in this. And of course, this is partially influenced by the fact that I'm moderating on tonight, and so I'm going to exercise a little bit of liberty. I saw in our chat on tonight a question that was posed, and I'd like to pose this question to each of you, and we can start with Reverend Erica with the response. Tell us about a time when a woman supported or impacted your faith walk. And I'm asking this primarily because it has not always been popular for women to sit in seats of authority or leadership in the faith community. So if you can, please share with us how how women, or about a time when a woman has impacted or supported you in your faith?
Thank you, Pastor Riley. That is an excellent question. I would say the first woman that impacted my faith walk is my mother. She's not ordained clergy, but she has been a woman of faith, of great faith, of deep faith, who has taught me the ways of faith. She's inspired me to trust in the God who would be all things. And her words were backed up by her actions. And one of the things that she encouraged and instilled in me and my sister as we were growing up, and even she does this to this day, is to be obedient to God, to do what God tells you to do, whatever that thing might be. And so I would say the first woman that inspired and spoke into my life of faith is my mother. When I began to discern a call to ministry, my mother was the first one to champion me on in living out that ministry. Even when we didn't see women around us walking in the faith. And so my mother, and then as I grew and graduated from college, I became a part of another faith community. Grew up Presbyterian, joined a Baptist church, was Baptist for a number of years. And there in that church, as I continued to grow in my faith, there was an evangelist who saw in me the gifts that I didn't see. And she spoke into it and encouraged me, just as my mother did, to do what God was calling me to do. And even though I didn't see it, she nudged me, she pushed me, she prodded me so much that I had to go to God and say, okay, Lord, what is it that you're saying? And so God eventually spoke to me and pushed me beyond my comfort zone, pushed me beyond my fears, pushed me beyond what people around me would say. I didn't have any men saying, I see a call on your life, or you should consider this, or have you. But there have been women who have pushed me, and because the women pushed me, I eventually went to my pastor, who said, yeah, I see this, I see that. And he confirmed for me. But the women I have had women to speak into me. And they also called me to, or pushed me and called me to advocate, just as Jesus advocated for the least of these. In many places, in many spaces, women are still seen as the least of these, without opportunity. And so anyway, I have had women to speak into me, and I thank God for those women and for my sister circle, for my female clergy. Pastor Riley, you have encouraged me, and I'm thankful to God for you. I feel like I'll continue rambling, so hopefully that's enough for now. Thank you.
Thank you, my sister. I'm almost like your mom at this point, and I'm like, tears. Thank you. I'd like to allow the gentleman to respond, but I'm going to have to ask you to give me the 1 minute response because our time is just about up. So if you can just briefly tell us about the woman who impacted or influenced your faith. Reverend Gray?
My mama and grandmama. She was a district missionary in Church of God in Christ, spoke over my life. Mama, always a part of that. I cannot deny that those women are impactful. Nor can I deny Dr. Dolly Giselle Adams, the wife of Bishop John Hurst Adams, has also been equally as essential along my journey. But mama and grandmama did the work. Thank you.
I'll jump in next, Pastor Riley. I would say definitely my grandmother as well, and my mama, Pastor Gray, and I got that Church of God in Christ history background as well together. My grandmother and my mom taught me three things: principles, perseverance, and patience. Later in life, I have to say Pastor Betty Haney, who was in Tallahassee, and it's who I gave my life to the Lord under her ministry. She called me out in an embarrassing moment in front of all my college friends and told me all my business. And next thing I know, I was up under the pew crying. And then last but not least, Bishop Julia Whitehurst Wade, who was one who was extremely instrumental in helping me to start the ministry that I'm pastoring in. Her words and her directions and her guidance really was instrumental for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Reverend Gray is not with us. Imam?
I'm here, but I thought I responded.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant Reverend Bracey. My apologies, Reverend Gray. Imam, would you like to share? You're muted, sir.
I'll try and do this as quickly as I possibly can, but I'm going to chime in on this. You know, Mama takes the medal home tonight. Okay, so my mother is the one that when I went off to college and, as I mentioned, got into this deep dive on theology and world history and religion, I became a Muslim while I was in college, and I came back to my hometown, and she encouraged me while many other people were ridiculing me and saying this, that, and the other because they didn't have a certain amount of knowledge, that the reason why I had changed my whole lifestyle from going out partying, etc. So it was my mother. The second one is Clara Muhammad, the wife of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, who stood for the education of self and education of our people, you know, without the influence of someone else telling us how to educate our people. Third one is my wife, and I hope I get some brownie points tonight. She started a whole group concerning women and being their better selves, and they have a Central Florida Association. And one thing I want to say is that our prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said, heaven lies at the feet of the mother. And that means every woman. So if we handle our business correctly, then we can have a little piece of heaven as long as we treat these women correctly, treat them right. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you for sharing. I like that. Heaven lies at the feet of women. I appreciate that. Thank you to every single one of you. Our panelists on tonight have empowered us. They've enlightened us. They've certainly engaged us. And I want to say thank you to Reverend Erica Rembert Smith, Reverend Randolph Bracey Jr., who had another commitment and had to leave us. Imam Hatim Hamadullah, thank you very much. Bishop-elect Derrick Mcrae, we certainly appreciate your time. And Reverend Terence R. Gray, we thank you for engaging us and sharing with us on tonight. Certainly, we recognize the relevance of faith and spirituality in our community. It is without question. It is absolutely essential to our existence and to the stabilization of our communities. From the intersection of Christianity and the transatlantic slave trade to today's political landscape, in the words that Reverend Bracey shared with us, we have certainly come this far by faith. And it is our faith that has developed through the church and has become the center of resistance to slavery and white supremacy. It is that same faith that has become a magnet of political mobilization. It is an incubator of musical and oratorical talent that would certainly transform the culture. Many people we see today on national and international stages got their start in the church. And we realize that it is also a crucible for working through the Black community's most critical issues. And so we certainly are appreciative. We are certainly indebted to God for instilling in us the faith that we have to be able to trust him and to continue to lean on him. Again, we would like to say thank you to our panelists. Thank you to all of you who have taken the time to join us on tonight. We would like to invite you to take a brief poll. We'd like to be able to determine the effectiveness of our outreach. We want to be able to find out how you learned of tonight's event. So if you will please make sure that you take the poll before you leave our call on tonight. And lastly, I'd like to say thank you to the entire Black History Month committee for facilitating and orchestrating these events throughout the month. And certainly want to say thank you to Reggie McGill, who is just really an incredible foot soldier in this effort. Thank you to Mayor Dyer for joining us. And again, thank you to Commissioner Regina Hill and Commissioner Bakari Burns. Thank you.
Black History Month is
Intelligence,
resiliency,
Integrity, acceptance,
empowering,
innovative,
remembrance,
identity,
equity,
freedom,
love.
26 House wants to say thank you to all those who have come before us in the African American community and celebrate and embrace Black history.
Together, we stand united as a community of Magic fans with a common passion and love for the game. We cheer together from our living rooms, chat rooms, and in the arena, on the court and off the court. Together, we are strong. Together, we overcome. We are Magic together.
It's time to crack an egg.
Easy, any style egg works here.
Or smile.
Well done, this looks great.
Time to share a story.
Have a great way to start our discussion.
With old friends or new ones.
When you're a caregiver.
Time to breathe in.
And pal up. Good job.
Then let it all out. It's never been easier to connect, learn, and have fun.
Cheers.
So let's do it together. Come find us at aarp.org/near-you.
It's time to hit reset on HIV. Here's why sticking to HIV treatment, exactly as prescribed, is so important. It helps lower the amount of virus in your body to undetectable. There's so little virus, it can't be measured by a lab test. People living with HIV can protect their partners by getting to and staying undetectable. According to current research, staying undetectable prevents the transmission of HIV through sex. Talk to a healthcare provider and get reset at helpstopthevirus.com.
Welcome to 26 Health, Center Florida's LGBTQ Health Center. I'm Dr. David Baker Hargrove, President and co-CEO. At 26 Health, we strive to create an integrated, multidisciplinary health center that serves all of our community through primary medical care, behavioral health services, adoption services, patient care services, and our MediSpa. At 26 Health, we care for every letter. No matter how you identify, your letter matters to us.